Good afternoon. Thank you for joining this afternoon's webinar, or for this morning's webinar for those of you that are based in the States. We're just going to leave it as always, just for 30 seconds or so, just for everyone to join us and to settle in, and we will start the webinar. So we'll just give it 30 seconds or so. It's always like the longest 30 seconds or minute. Can I keep quiet? Okay, I think we should start. So thank you, as I said, for joining us for this afternoon's webinar. We've run a couple of sessions over the last year, and when we've talked about data. And one of the things that has been asked on a number of occasions is, what data do we use? What data do we hold? And how can we use this data? And I'm so glad to say that we spoke with CloudPay and David, who you'll meet shortly, and they offered to run this great webinar today and to talk about data and how you can actually use it. So I'm going to remove myself now, and I'll pass you over to David. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mel. It's great to be here. Thank you, everyone, for joining today. We've got a fun presentation for you today. Stick around to the end because we've got a live demonstration of some great data and how to use it for operational excellence. Let me introduce some of my fellow panelists here. So I'm David Barak. I'm Chief Marketing Officer here at CloudPay and have been with the organization for around 6 years. And I'm joined by Marlene and John. Marlene, could you introduce yourself?
Sure. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Marlene Fellis-Bartow, and I'm the Global Director of Solution Consulting here at CloudPay. And my role is to really work through and introduce companies to our product, our services, and how we work within our unified solution.
Marlene, I know you're going to be showing us some great data today. John?
I will.
Hey, good afternoon, good morning, everybody. John Pierce. I lead our global payroll teams at CloudPay globally, working every day with our customers, supporting them to manage their payroll process with their employees. So talking about some of the operational uses for some of our data and how we work together with our customers to try and leverage that data that we collect during the payroll process. So really excited to be here today.
Great. John, get ready. I'm going to ask you about your favorite KPI when we get to that.
I love that.
So I know which one it is. So today we're going to give you a little bit of information about CloudPay. I promise that'll be about 2-3 minutes. And then we'll move into the data for operational excellence and what are some of the things our customers, one of the things analysts are starting to use to help dig deeper into what payroll can do. And then we'll talk about strategic objectives that you can achieve using your payroll data with a live demo. Now it says Q&A at the end, but really it's a persistent Q&A. There's an option for you to ask the question. So please do, we'll find natural breaks to answer your questions. And especially when we start demoing, if there's a particular thing you want to see or anything you want to ask specific questions around, do submit your questions ahead of time. You don't have to wait to the end, although you are welcome to do that as well. So when we started talking about data and what's possible in global payroll, we first started to look at what are the operational models that exist in the global payroll space that enable really deep analysis of payroll. And there are really 3 different models that exist in the space today. There's the local vendor model, which is where you contract directly with a particular vendor in a country to do the payroll. And there's some pros and cons to this, right? So the pros are, it's really ideal for smaller global companies. It can be the lowest per paycheck cost. It can provide customer service options by region, but it's not a great solution for everyone, right? There's little global process visibility, a lot of disparate software. Reporting is really done at a local level, so you can't look at it at an aggregate level. And there's often no strategic focus on payroll when that model is deployed in an organization. One of the models that became really popular around the mid-1990s was the aggregator model. And this looked to address some of the challenges that the local model had. And it gave you a single service contract. It created some data consolidation, but it still lacks the real-time ability to report. You can get global SLAs, but it's still not giving you that deep insight. And one of the models we've been pioneering is this unified global pay solution that's able to unify payroll, earned wage access, treasury services, and a number of other things into a single database and a single workflow, right? And once you do that, you're able to actually do some really fun things with the data, and that's what we're going to show you today. So our assumption here is that you're either in model 2, the aggregator model, and moving to model 3, or you're already in model 3 and starting to think about, well, how do I do more with my data? So let's move on from there. A little bit about us. We do global payroll, treasury services, and we have also introduced the first earned wage access solution that can be deployed globally. We've been doing this for a little bit over 25 years. We do this across 130 countries and have a global support model, but really all of these solutions are highly integrated. So you're not really buying 3 different solutions or using 3 different solutions. It's really treated as one integrated work stream. From there, we believe very strongly in providing in-region, in-culture, and in-language support. And that's why we've expanded globally. And we haven't traveled to a lot of these offices in a while, but we are around, we do have offices across 11 different geographies. So that's a little bit about us. What are we going to focus on today? When Ernst & Young ran a study and asked organizations what are the top 5 challenges they have around global payroll, this is the distribution that they came back with. And while we could run a webinar on each one of these topics, today we're really going to focus on one. So these are those same 5 challenges. And today we're going to focus on the consolidation of reporting and analytics and what's possible when you move beyond this, right? So what are the challenges organizations say they have in these space, in this specific space? It's compromised data integrity. They're only able to report at a local level. There's not enough visibility of payroll costs, and there's really no plan for continuous process improvement. And that's one of the things we want to map for you today. And organizations that come to us, they talk about the impact they're looking to have when they deploy a unified solution. These are things our customers have said, but today we're going to focus on insights, right? And before we do that, we'd like to learn a little bit more about you. So I want you to think back to a slide we presented a long, long time ago, about 2 minutes ago, which was the 3 different models. And we're going to ask you a little bit of a poll question to help us understand which model you are in today, and it'll help John and Marlene talk to the specific opportunities within your space. So Mel, could I ask you to fire up the poll? There we go. Thank you, Mel. So which models best describe your current payroll system? If you just take a second. John, Marlene, which way do you think this is going to go? You're on mute, John.
I'm putting my bets on regional being most popular today. Got a feeling it's regional today.
I think so. I'm going to go 20 local. Yeah. All right. Let's see. So we're going to give you guys just a few more seconds.
I'm the lucky one that can see some of the results, you see.
Oh no, no.
So can we just have a couple more, because I'd like to get that magic number. So we just have a couple more, just answer the survey. That'd be fantastic, and then I can end that for you, David, and I'll pass it over to you.
Yeah, we try to ask this question every couple of years to understand the market. And I remember when we started asking this question, there was so much concentration on the local side, right? About 10 years ago, there were just so many organizations that were still using local vendors. So we'll see how this changes. Let's get to that magic number. Okay. I think we're looking for 70% right now.
Yeah, we've got over that. So are you happy? I'll end it and then I'll launch the answers. Yeah. Thank you so much, everyone that answered. So John, what did you say?
I went for regional, Bob.
Okay, right. I'm going to share them with you.
Ah! Okay, I'm not guessing the next one.
Hey,
wow,
that is,
look at all you progressive people.
Isn't this encouraging?
Yes, this is great. I'm disappointed I'm lost, but I'm optimistic with the result.
Great to see you so competitive, John. Right, I'll stop sharing now, and I'll.
Thank you, Mel. So on that note, let us move over to a topic that I know you guys want to hear a lot about, and that's operational excellence. John, could I have you talk to us a little bit kind of where do you think people start and how do they move to this?
Yeah, I would love to take over at this point, David. Thank you. So before I get too down into specifics, I just want to take a step back, and clearly all of the folks on the call today, we're providing payroll services to your employees, and always the most critical metrics for you to consider is, did we pay the employees accurately, and did we pay the employees on time? And most of you will have these as SLA agreements within your contracts with your vendors, whichever type of solution you're using. And whilst it's really great when the vendor sends you the SLA number for the month or the quarter of the year, and you're at 99.99 or sometimes even 100, and it's very green, it doesn't always give you the full insight into that process, how you as a customer and your payroll teams are performing, how the vendor is performing as well, and how you jointly perform as a payroll team providing support. So I often talk to customers, and a sentiment that comes from the industry is, why are my SLAs green if my payroll team is feeling so red? And I think it leads to a really interesting question about, there must be some more interesting metrics out there that help us as payroll practitioners and owners of global payroll processes to allow us to get more insight, to allow us to work in more of a continuous improvement cycle, and for us to really understand how we can get better every period, every payroll run, so that we can drive efficiency and value into our organizations. So we always need to hit our numbers with accuracy and timeliness. But at CloudPay, we also like to try and explore some other measurements or payroll KPIs to really work with our customers and to help us all continue to improve our performance. So where do we start with that? So at CloudPay, David mentioned our unified cloud solution. So we have a number of tools that allow us to support our customers with their payroll process management. It's a single cloud-based application, as well as the main payroll screens where you can look at your payroll data and make your payroll validations and approvals. We also have a number of other online tools that support the processing management. So we have our calendar application. We have some nice workflows, and we use some robotics and AI to help us do some of the repeatable validations that need to be performed on all outputs. Today, we're going to talk a bit more, as David said, about analytics and reporting. So our unified solution allows us to produce for our customers a standardized gross to net. That gross to net contains your payroll results, and it can be ran either at single payroll level, or you can run it at group level for every single payroll and have your whole payroll results presented in a single unified format. And that applies to general ledgers and other business reporting you need to do as a customer. Now, what's really interesting for payroll geeks and payroll practitioners is some of the stuff we can now do with our analytics tool. So as we step through these standardized workflows on each payroll every period, our operational team is looking at what's going on with the data, with the process, and they're recording in one of the applications types of issues and the detail behind these issues as they come up and as they get resolved, before we get to the final approval and lock the payroll in and go into payments and payslip delivery and all the post-processing activities that are required. Thank you, David. So here's some of the key KPIs or the payroll efficiency KPIs that we are really keen on tracking at CloudPay. Some of these are system-driven calculations. Some of them have some root cause analysis done behind them. as David mentioned, my favorite KPI of all time. I love the one on the left of your screen, first time approval. I hope it's fairly self-explanatory, but a first time approval is all the payroll data comes in from the customer. The payroll is then processed. The results are validated. The results are then presented to the customer. And the first time the customer sees those results, they check them off, they perform their own validations, they're happy with the result, and they make their approval on the trial run or the trial gross to net, or whatever it is the term that you're using for your system. When this happens, it means that everything you wanted to happen in your payroll process, all the data's come in on time, it's all loaded okay. The payroll processing practitioners have made their calculations correctly. It's all gone back into the system. Your validations have come back clean. Nobody is having to do any rework. Nobody's staying in to do the payroll till midnight. It's really, for us at CloudPay, the biggest single indicator that we have a very efficient and smooth process going on that particular payroll, and one that gives our customers a lot of security around knowing that they're operating a strong process and are not having to do too much rework in order to get the payroll correct for their employees. Now, what can break your first time approval? Because it is really hard to hit 100% first time approval. So some of the things that come along the way. So we're going to start with data in. So sometimes when you have an integration running from a system to system, we have a lot of feeds coming in from HCM platforms, or if the customer is manually filling in some data on a predefined template because they don't hold it in their HCM, that data has to be presented to us. We try and make it easy, but it's a complicated process for the customer to get all the different sources of their payroll input, get it all together, and make sure they pass it over to the payroll provider. When we have problems, either an integration fail, a file upload fail, because there's some missing data or the format's not correct, what happens is that then slows down the payroll processing time, and you have to spend time working with the customer to understand and to fix that data error before you can proceed to the actual calculation. So we like to track how often these kind of issues occur, and see how we can go about fixing them. That the end driver is to have more time to focus on the processing and the validation later down the line. The other,
John, do you want to take a question on one of them? We've had one come in.
I'm happy to take any questions.
It's about your, and I do encourage you guys to send in questions if you have them. Now, this is about your favorite KPI. So we've got a metric up there for first-time approvals. How do organizations think about what a good first-time approval is? And you'd probably say it's a journey, right, to get to it. How would you encourage practitioners to think about that?
It's a great question. So I think at the highest level, you've got to, if you've got a one-person payroll, it's fairly static. You want to be at a really high first-time approval. There's no real excuse to. Most of the attendees today are probably operating some fairly large headcounts and fairly complicated payrolls. And they probably have an appreciation that trying to get a first-time approval every time to run the payroll is just, it's not realistic. So what we tend to see from an average customer, let's say when they first move over from implementation, you would typically expect to see around 70% around their global scope. Now the game or the aim or the challenge for us, we're working with our customers, is to help our customers build that up, to work with them, to understand where we can improve, how we can help support them in certain things. And what we see typically is after 12 or so months, we're hitting around 75% on an average. So what that means is every 4 payrolls we run, 3 of them get approved first time. There's no rework to be done. Some of our customers, they are challenging themselves now. So they've been running at 75%. And as we speak with them and talk about the year to come, we'll agree, let's challenge ourselves. Let's see if we can drag this up to 80% for for the next financial year. And that's something that we can really work together, we can focus on, and it's a clear, helps us measure how successful our partnership has been and how much value we can add. Because, you know, if you're running for a customer maybe 200, 300, 400 payrolls a year, you know, if you have 50 more of them approved without any rework, this actually translates into a real big efficiency saving for the customer and for us as a payroll provider. So I think, you know, if you're somewhere around 3 out of 4, 75%, something like that, I think you're doing good. If you're north of that and you still have a complex, large scope to deal with, then you should be really proud of how your payroll process is performing.
Thanks, John.
All right, next one, I'm going to talk about issues per 1,000 pay slips. So, you know, we've got the data in. We've done some calculations and we've passed that data back to the customer, and the customer's finding problems with that data. So believe it or not, at CloudPay, we do also occasionally make some mistakes with our payroll. We do try to avoid them. We do try to learn from them, but global payroll remains very complex and very challenging. So here, what we're trying to do is record every time a customer finds some issue that's going to require some rework. And we try and get down to understand where in the process this has happened. You know, is there a configuration change needed? Is there some training we need to do? We've had some turnover. We've got somebody who doesn't quite understand something. This data allows us to understand where we've gone wrong and where we need to improve. And you know, every day is a school day in global payroll. I've been at CloudPay for nearly 15 years, and you know, we're still learning, and I think there's always going to be more to do. Another thing we like to understand, or it's interesting, it's always a challenge for our customers, is the calendar length. So the amount of time before the payday, the amount of time you have to have in your process where you lock the payroll, where the business is no longer allowed to provide more changes into that payroll. So you freeze the data set, you make that calculation. How does that work? What does that look like across all of our customers at a country level, at a regional level? Understanding, is there some best practice that allows us to shrink that calendar for our customers so their business has more time and opportunity to get as much data into that main run? All sorts of benefits. You have less stress on your HR team, your commissions team. New hires don't have to wait so long, or you avoid off-cycle runs. So trying to reduce that cutoff time, but still allow the payroll teams to have sufficient time to produce a quality result is the never-ending discussion about where can we fix that calendar time. We want it as late as possible, but we need to have enough time. What if there's an issue? We need to be able to react. So here we're tracking it across country, across customer, across region, and we're looking to understand what allows some countries to have a much shorter schedule than other countries, and try and apply some best practice across those payrolls. And the other one, which I will see if I move my screen, supplemental impact, or off-cycle run, or whatever we're calling it this time today. So some countries, you know, I guess you guys know them as well as I do, they're just prime candidates for off-cycle. You feel like you're running off-cycle every single day. Other countries are very rare for off-cycle. A lot of that can be driven and is mainly driven by the requirements of that country. You know, you need to pay a leaver on the last day. You need to pay somebody before they go off on their holiday. Some of these supplementals or off-cycles are driven by the business themselves, having to include some data that couldn't quite make it into the main run, but it's really important for the employee experience so they don't have to wait until the next period. Maybe it's some overtime, it's some commission, whatever it is. But understanding that a supplementary run or an off cycle in its nature is unscheduled and unplanned, it puts extra pressure on the customer's payroll team. There's extra work to do for the processing vendor. And there's typically extra costs involved. So understanding what's the driver behind these supplemental runs. Is there a way that we can deliver more value to our customers and their businesses by helping share best practice and reduce or better manage the frequency of these supplementary runs? Is also an area that we look at and we think is useful to add some value to our customers' payroll processing.
John, we have one more question, but I think you might be answering it with your next slide here about how do you then use this data with the operational review sessions, and how do you actually understand it and embed it? So maybe let's see if we can answer it in the next slide. And
Let's do it.
And if not, please ask your question again.
Yeah, I think it's a great question. You know, we're collecting all of this data. It's not a lot of good to anybody if we don't find ways of getting some value from it. So how do we do this at CloudPay, and how has that evolved over the years? Well, firstly, as many of our customers that will engage with us will have a monthly service review. What we mean with that is that can either be at regional or global level on our customers, and maybe it's the global payroll manager and their payroll team that come and join. It is some of the senior payroll leadership from CloudPay joining them on that call, and we're talking about what went well this month, what's going to happen next month, where can we improve. Now, what we've added to that conversation and what's made, it really is a game changer for our personal experience at CloudPay is we now, when we have those service reviews or those wash ups or whatever we're calling them, we're sharing the screen. We all love the Zoom nowadays. We're sharing the screen and we're logged into our analytics platform, and we're looking at that specific customer. We're looking at the metrics, those KPIs. We're looking at how they happened, how things worked out on all of their payrolls that went through. We're also tracking that data every month so we can do a trend analysis on it. Are we getting better? Are we getting worse? What's going good? Where do we need to improve? And we also can then overlay some benchmarks. And Marlene will give you some visualization as she does a demo. I wasn't brave enough to do a live demo, but you will see something later. So with our customers, our key touch point of our cycle is once we're all done and dusted, all the payrolls are done, all the pay slips are gone, bank files are done, GLs are gone, then we have a couple of days to stop, breathe, chill, sleep, whatever we need to do, and then we'll come back and sit with our customers and start going through the metrics and really drill down, where are the areas to improve? Have we got any challenges with data coming in? Is there something we need to resolve? Have we got any issues within the processing environment in terms of understanding of requirements of configuration? And have we got any post-processing issues that we need to figure out? Have we got some unbalanced GLs? Have we got bank files getting rejected? All of these little details that you can typically resolve as they come up, but they just get frustrating. Really trying to understand what's driving these problems that we're juggling our way through the payroll process to get to the finishing line, and trying to every month just make that little incremental improvement, that process change that allows us to continuously improve. And that's how we try and use this data with our customers to create a more visible, a more transparent, a more collaborative approach to working with our customers to try and give their employees the best payroll experience that we can, and also for the customer's payroll team. So some examples that we've come, and the first one, it always amazes me that literally every customer that comes to us on this Brazil payroll run, 3 to 4 months after we've taken it into live and we're into this nice rigor of reviewing the data, and we just see, oh, we've done 6 off cycles in Brazil last month, 7 this month, and talking with the customer and understanding, all right, okay, so we've got the mid-month advance, we've got some levers we got to do, and we've got the main run, but we've also got these 3 or 4 holiday payouts where we've got to give some of the employees some money before they go on vacation. And almost every time we're able to talk to our customer and have them work with the local HR team and schedule the delivery of that holiday calculation, so that all of the employees get their holiday pay before they go, but it doesn't just come in piecemeal. It almost, we've scheduled dates for off cycles, which for an unplanned run sounds a bit counterintuitive, but because we know these are going to come up, we try and fix them in the schedule and maybe limit it to 2 holiday runs per month where it's all possible. It's always a great result when you see that off cycle count start to reduce per month. Another one. So data input errors. So you're whatever you're doing, whatever vendor solution model you're operating, you were going to get some data input errors. It's a really tricky game to be 100% clean on your data input every time. I mean, I've seen some customers that are absolutely fantastic at it, but even those guys have the odd issue from time to time. So understanding by looking at the data, not by hearsay or kind of non-data driven, but really analyzing where these data issues are occurred. What is it that's causing it, and how's that trending over time? Allows you to really focus in on the problem. And sometimes we've seen it absolutely as basic as we've had some turnover in the customer payroll team. The new person's been onboarded, they've had their training, they're being supported, but they just one of the more edge case scenarios for data input, they're just struggling with it. They're not quite there and able to pinpoint that as the issue, and able to have some specific and targeted training. It might only be a 15-20 minute call. We're not talking about sitting around for 3 hours, but really just allowing us to share the education, to support that new member of the CloudPay user family, allows us to really just knock that one on the head and then carry on with looking at other things. And sometimes you've got other problems happening. So within the processing, you're coming back and there's constantly this challenge. In this example, which is a real life example, it was a French payroll, as a vacation accrual that we were performing for a customer. We just hadn't understood the requirements correctly. We configured something that didn't match the expectation, and over time it was just this reoccurring issue. So getting the customer's French specialists and our French in-country providers to sit around and talk, obviously in French, and really work through that requirement and make sure they were aligned, and then making some adjustments and running some test calculations until everybody's really happy that there's a clearer understanding and alignment, allowed us to figure that error out. And the three things here, they have one thing in common, that the analytics data allowed us to identify and pinpoint the issue really quickly, and to not feel like we're pointing fingers or blaming people, but really just looking at the process, identifying the issue, jointly solutioning, executing the solution, and that that's how it works really well for us at CloudPay, and I hope our customers share a similar sentiment.
John, I think these are great examples. We've had some questions, and we're about to go into another poll, but before that, let's take a couple. And Marlene and John, I'm going to open this up to both of you. I think there's a very popular buzz term in analytics, which is predictive analytics. So I know we've wrestled with the idea of predictive analytics versus benchmarking, and how do you help organizations understand and think about the roadmap for improvement? So when you work with customers or prospects towards operational improvement, how do you balance that benchmarking or predictive nature of analytics to help them build that roadmap?
Wow.
Hey, that was from Chris Kirby. Thank you, Chris. That's a tough question.
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I think straight away my initial reaction is at CloudPay, we've got a lot more we can do in terms of getting better at predictive analytics. I think the way we use it right now and try and add some value is we can understand by looking at the trends and looking at the history and looking at benchmarks. We can tell a customer in a particular country with a particular headcount is probably going to have these types of issues. So we get a head start about where we're going to focus on. We know, I'll try and find a new example, but in Brazil, we know we're going to have a time squish because we're just going to feel like we're constantly processing payroll. And we know that when a customer comes on board. So we can already start to predict with our customers what are the type of things we can start to put in place to mitigate that from becoming an actual payroll issue. We know there's going to be, with a certain HCM, an integration might consistently start to throw out the same kind of error messages, and so we kind of get ahead of that. I think in the future, what's going to be almost as interesting, and particularly, payroll and finance are quite interrelated. I think being able to predict when money movement needs to happen. We know the pay date, we know the rough value of the payroll. So giving the customer some kind of detailed data-driven forecast on money movement and cash flow, and where they need, what banks they need to have money in, maybe 3-4 months in advance, is something we're working on at CloudPay. We haven't got it quite right, but it's something I think will add some value. But it's a tough one, and I don't know, Marlene, any perspective? Sorry to throw the tough one your way.
No, I think you're hitting, all of the good points. I think also having the capability to track of where we're spending a lot of the times in the payroll process also helps us understand those specific areas of maybe challenge or improvement when we consider the calendar piece as well. So having that information makes it very, very useful as we move on and we continue to learn and work with new customers.
Thank you, guys. So we'll take some more questions as we go, but I see some comments clamoring for a demo. And I really want to see Marlene shine here. So Mel, can I ask you to launch our next poll? You see the questions up here?
Yep, I have got that. So I'm just going to launch it now. So it's, are you currently using your payroll data for operational excellence? So I'm just going to, can you see that on the screen?
Yep.
What do you reckon is going to be the top answer for this one? Marlene, do you want to go first?
I'm gonna go with minimal use of our data for process optimization, at least based on what I hear in talking to prospects coming over to CloudPay.
I'm going yes and no. I've done some more research. I've looked at the attendee list. I can see a few folk that I recognize. So I reckon there's definitely some folks on here today that are using their payroll data to hopefully optimize their process. But let's see.
Yeah, David, tell me when you want to close it, because we're over the magic number.
Let's do it. Let's close it, and we'll move into a demo shortly.
Can you see the results?
Wow, good stuff. Way to go through the attendee list, John. That is good insight. So clearly a lot of you are exploring it and thinking about how you might want to use it. So hopefully we'll show those of you that are not currently using it or are thinking about it, ways that CloudPay thinks about using this data. So with that, let's move in to our next section, which involves a live demo. I asked Marlene to talk us through it first, and then we'll launch ourselves right into CloudPay's analytics platform.
Thank you, David. So before we move into the live demonstration, I just really want to talk to everyone here about how some of our customers are using our tools. And I think that's one of the biggest questions is, how do we use this data? And in here, what this specific customer has done is they've aligned the CloudPay payroll analytics functionality to meet some of their business goals. And that quote that you see on the screen there is a direct quote from that specific customer. And it really just talks about the power of our tools. So the amount of data and reporting available at our fingertips is something that you cannot put money on. So for them, as they're going through this payroll transformation on a global scale, they really started to think about what goals they wanted to meet. And in this case, they had 3 major goals of standardizing the global payroll process and systems, enhancing the employee experience, and of course, what probably everyone wants is to reduce the compliance and operational risks. So as we go through the live demonstration today, I will be touching on all of the different dashboards that we have available to help not just this customer, but any customer essentially meet some of these goals, whether it's through cost management, time and resource management. Of course, we're going to go through the regional performance and benchmarking. That seems to be a really good one for the audience here, and that performance improvement and how we really work through that almost in real time, if I'm so brave to say that. Okay.
I'm going to hand you the reins.
Over.
Yeah,
okay.
Here you go. Let's see.
Okay. Is every
Yep.
David, can you see my screen? All right,
looking
fantastic.
Great. Looking great.
Wonderful. Okay, so the first dashboard that I'm really going to go through is one of the ones that I find that a lot of our prospects have challenges with, and that's identifying the cost of global payroll. So when we think about making these changes and the big undertaking and the amount of work that we will face when going through a global payroll transformation, there's also a piece to this, and that's that cost. So as we're working with prospects, we are trying to support them, whether it's with their business case or return on investment. So we a lot of the times need this type of information, and we continuously get the answer of we don't know, or it is really difficult to get their hands on the current costs. So from here, you can see we do have a pre-built dashboard that does allow us not only to provide you this information, but then also use this information to help our customers. So in the example of that, the Brazil payroll that John had mentioned earlier, you can see here that we have everything broken down by a category. So if we're starting to see that supplemental run percentage go up, that is a good indicator for us during these monthly reviews to sit down with our customers and try and get a better understanding of what's happening and how we can also reduce that as well. So in here, we have a pretty good average, right? Because it looks like the bulk of the work is happening with just normal payroll processing. You can also look at different things. So if you want to look at the specific spending by country, you can go ahead and do that. But then you can also start to look at, things over time. So what is happening with that invoicing, and what are the trends that we're seeing? Are we seeing any significant spikes or decreases? And are those spikes and decreases related to the different types of headcount that you currently have, and or potentially other items such as, ad hoc runs or supplementary runs? So being able to have this information, spot trends, becomes really valuable for not just the payroll teams, but for the finance teams as well, and just for the company in general. Okay. The other dashboard that we look at is, when it comes to the payroll information, one thing that I'd really like to challenge everyone is, as we think about the world opening up and now having different sources of getting data, are you getting the data from the right source? So in this example here, I'm actually going to go through a timesheet data analysis, and you may be thinking to yourselves, well, maybe I have a time and attendance system and I can get that information from there. The piece that makes this a little bit different is not only can we track the average time of hours per employee, but we can give you that breakdown also by geography. And the key piece to this is not only can we report things in, these beautiful little graphs or things of that nature, but we can provide you the information in a single currency. So if you're thinking of using, maybe your time and attendance system to track some of these costs or overtime analysis and things of that nature, maybe you only have the hours, maybe you do have the hours and the amount that's being paid out, but it could potentially all be in local currency. So if you want to take your analysis to that next level, having the capability to have all of that information in a single currency, whether it's USD or pounds or euros or whatever makes sense to you, and really being able to realistically compare that data. So on here, you can look at, again, different types of trends that we're seeing as we're going and moving through the year. You can also look at the expense by cost center. So, as you're going through global transformation, standardizing, those kinds of structures really gives you better results on a data level. So if you have a specific cost center that is running a little bit higher, being able to drill into that and understanding what is the root cause behind of that. Is there a lot of overtime? Is there a lot of shift differentials that are happening? And, can you potentially use that information to restructure things internally and, hopefully reduce some of those costs? So these are just some examples that we have here. But again, it's really bringing it to that global level. Okay, the other part, what we're going to go into now, I'm going to focus more a little around payroll and performance and just highlight some of the things that John had mentioned before. So one of the great things about this tool as well is as we're going through the process, you have the capability to track where we are with a specific payroll. So that's another thing that we hear, as we're talking to customers, or depending on what model you're in. If you're in that local model or that aggregator model, sometimes it's a little scary not knowing if somebody's actively working on your payroll. You know that you've submitted the data, but then there's a little bit of that blackout or that gap. So on here, as we are going through and working on the payroll for all of your different countries, we are tracking the progress. So you can very quickly see in some of the examples that we have here using these dials, the different stages that the payroll is in. Or if you want to see it by a country level, you can come in here and just kind of get a quick gauge of where we are, whether we're still with data loading or potentially doing the processing or going through what we call our approvals piece here. So always having that visibility of where we are at any point in time. All right, now let's get, oh, go ahead, David, sorry.
Marlene, can I throw a question at you?
You can. An easy question.
Yes. How many of our customers or organizations we speak to actually use dashboards this way? Is this becoming common practice, or are we continuing to help them start using it? Where do they sit right now?
We're starting to see it more and more, David. I think in the beginning, it was a bit of a shift in the way that we normally think of payroll. And it used to be payroll is done, and then that was it. We were just getting ready and focusing on things for the next cycle, but we weren't really drilling into this information. I think that the way that we work with our customers and having these monthly reviews and opening up these discussions has now made everyone more comfortable with starting to use these different dashboards. Analytics, I think on a payroll scale, sometimes it tends to be a little bit scary. So I think just having that that one-on-one time with our customers on a monthly basis has encouraged them to start leveraging more of our dashboards and more of our tools.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay, so on this one here, we talked about a little bit of the processing times. So having the capabilities to track that type of information and also tying that into where we're spending the most time in a payroll cycle. So this specific dashboard, we're just looking at a comparison. I have here a specific country. So we're looking at Italy. We're benchmarking that against EMEA and then all of the other countries on a global level. And the great thing about this one here as well as you can see that as we're going through our payroll cycle, the way that we work, it is in a standard manner. So it gives us the capabilities to have this information. But on here, we can also see where the time is going in each payroll cycle. So for this all here, I can see that a lot of the time is, or a big portion of the time is in that post approval. So that is anything that comes after the payroll, whether it's employee payments or statutory payments, things of that nature. It makes sense to me that that's where a bigger part of the payroll processing calendar is being spent on. And the reason for that is we know on a global scale, depending on the country, there are different deadlines that we have to meet for statutory filings. And normally those tend to be, you know, with a couple exceptions, those tend to be within the first few days of that following month, right? So to me, this is something that I'm comfortable with, and it makes perfect sense to have those little bit of a higher percentage. The other one that I will show you very quick, John's favorite, is that first time approval. So again, as we are going through and working through the payroll cycle, you know, this is automatically being tracked. I think the one piece here that is also really important is you will notice that I have that supplementary impact as well. So we talked a little bit about supplemental runs. Just because it's not something that is standard and we know, you know, it's your normal payroll run for that month, doesn't mean it shouldn't count and we shouldn't provide you that visibility. So from our standpoint, whether it's a, you know, an ad hoc run or supplemental, whichever term that you like to use, we give you that visibility into that information as well. We don't just focus on the main payroll run and ignore the other items. All right, so some things on here, we talked about that process improvement, learning from prior experiences, and how do we all collectively get better as we move from one payroll period into the next. So we have this dashboard here around payroll issues. Now, you know, I think when we first look at this, maybe the name payroll issues isn't the greatest, but it really gives us the insights of, you know, what is happening with the payroll. We all know, unfortunately, there are times during the payroll that you do have that fire drill and everybody has to come together and solve an issue so that we can have a successful payroll. What this allows us to do, again, is to learn from that, identify when that issue happened, and to talk about it and figure out how we will prevent that from happening the following month and then the following month and so on and so forth. I know from my standpoint, when I sat on payroll operations side, it was not an easy conversation to have to go through and explain why the same issue happened month after month. So this is a really good way to force us to talk about those items and to see where we can improve. And how we do that is not only by tracking the information here, but actually having the level of detail to have those conversations. So in these examples that we have here, we can track everything by the specific country, by that specific payroll, and we track all of the errors by different error types, sub-error types, who found the error and who was that root cause. So John mentioned earlier, unfortunately, we do still make mistakes. Again, we highlight all of that information on here, and this is the only way that we can keep track of where those improvements need to happen. You will see that there's a description entered in here, so that will highlight what the reason was for that specific issue and the number of employees that were impacted on that. And then how did we solve it, right? How did we all come to an agreement that this is the right way to move forward? So it is a really good way for us to collaborate with all of our customers. And in turn, if we're getting better and we're having these conversations and we're seeing less errors, we're all becoming more efficient. And then all of that information translates into our SLA and KPI. So again, on here, being able to track everything. So when John makes comments of, are your SLAs green, but your payroll team is feeling red, we have that common understanding behind that, the team feeling read. We are reflecting all of that information on here. As you can see, we're tracking things by accuracy and timeliness. In this specific example, again, we are bringing in that level of detail so that we can get your payroll team out of feeling red and also being in the green. And we track everything for all the bits of the payroll process, not just for the payroll processing, but for the general ledger submissions. That's very important for finance. Tracking your statutory filings. So from a compliance standpoint, are we performing to expectations when it's time for year end? How we are tracking that as well, and making sure that all of year ends are being done accurately and on time. And then, as I mentioned earlier, your non-standard runs, so those off-cycle runs. Just because they aren't necessarily scheduled, it shouldn't mean that they shouldn't count as part of your SLA and KPI reports. So we make sure to include that information on here as well.
So,
And David, hopefully I left you enough time.
I think we have some great questions that have come in. I'm going to try to ask 3 of them, and I'm sorry if we don't get to yours. We will try to respond to you via email afterwards. But let's start with one that's kind of interesting. I wasn't expecting this one, but how do we think about making payments in cryptocurrency? John, do you want to take
That's a John question.
I think it's really exciting. I think clearly the link is to do with the speed of payment. Typically 20 to 30% of your calendar length is reserved for actually the final leg of moving the money from one account to the employee. Bitcoin can be one way to solve that. I have a hunch that might be hard to implement en masse. I'm not sure the world's quite ready for that, but there is some other awesome disruptive technology out there right now. Something that we have some live payments running through at the moment. We're very privileged to work with Visa, who have deployed a solution called Pay to Card or Pay to Bank. So unlike the traditional banking network that isn't really a globalized network, it's just a hodgepodge of different systems very badly trying to talk to each other and connect. The credit card and debit card rails is a true global solution. What that allows you to do now is not just pay for goods on your credit card. It allows you to now send a payment over those same rails, that same connection. And have it deposited pretty much instantly. I think we benchmarked the last 50 live payments, and they were reaching globally 23 seconds from payment execution to being in the beneficiary's account. I mean, that's a game changer in terms of reducing your calendar length and having just so much more control over that final leg. So I think rather than Bitcoin, I think we're going to focus more on that, but there is some really truly disruptive technology coming out, and CloudPay will hopefully continue to lead the charge for the payroll perspective and for our customers to try and get some value.
So thank you. And the credit rails can really save you 2, possibly 3 days off your payroll cycle. That's a significant savings.
It can give you 2 to 3 days to decide what to do with. So maybe you'd like more time to spend on validation. Maybe you want to give more time to the wider business to get their data in. Maybe you want to have some buffer time in there because your payroll team is slightly stretched. But it gives you opportunities where it's just at the moment you're just sitting around waiting and crossing your fingers as it runs through the various Swift networks and local ACH systems that we manage with today.
There we go. Payroll webinar that answered a crypto question. Way to go. So but we'll do one more question, and then thank you everyone for joining today. But this is a tough one. We had an anonymous. No, it was Aguilar Davis who asked, can you share what would be key data point they could provide to the organization to help make strategic decisions?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I think as a customer, you've really got to understand your business. We can give you some directions, but really when analytics works the best is when you come with a question. How do I answer this? What's the answer to this? Not trying to backwards engineer data into providing an answer thing is quite tricky. So I think the first step is to really understand your own business and some of the questions at a strategic level that the business wants answers to, either fast answers or really data-driven answers, and then come back to the payroll data to see how they can deliver that. I mean, things like, I don't know, we didn't quite have time, but in payroll, you can track overtime, payouts, the cost, the total amount. In some types of business, that would help drive strategic approaches in terms of how their operational planning works. So it's those kind of things. But I think the way I would approach this is really understanding my business and having a question or a problem that the leadership is trying to solve for, and then coming back to in this case CloudPay and saying, hey, here's some questions. Have we got some data that we can use for the analytics team to try and give some insight to try and solve this question? That would be my kind of 2 cents on the subject.
That's great. I want to be cognizant of time here. Mel, thank you for hosting CloudPay GPA. There you are.
Thank you so much. And yeah, it's a shame that we've come to an end. So thank you for sharing your knowledge and experience. And I'm sure everyone that's joined today has found it very useful. The recording and slides will be available on the GPA website should you wish to view it again. We'll also send an email out to everyone. And if there are any questions, as David said, that we didn't get around to answering, we'll make sure that we pass those on to the team at CloudPay. So thank you once again, and I hope to see you all very soon. Thank you.
That would be lovely, wouldn't it, Mel?
It would be in person.
Yes.
See you later.
Yes.
All right, have a good one. Thanks
Bye.
everybody for your time today. Appreciate it.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.